my name's Catherine.
My name's Ava.
My name's Natalie.
My name's Kylie.
My name's Taryn.
My name's Eliana.
And today we're just going to discuss themes and symbols that we found in the romance novels we read.
So I read The Return by Nicholas Sparks, and the theme that I saw commonly in my novel was the main character chasing after the forbidden girl, and it turns out that it's actually a forbidden love because she is married. And I think that was the reoccurring theme throughout my book.
I feel like that's a really strange theme to have. Like, that's not really common in romance novels because you were saying earlier that the husband was in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like such a weird situation.
Right. I feel like we don't see that often or at all. And anything I've read, it has not been.
Yeah, I've never heard a book that has that type of theme in it.
I can talk about my theme. Okay, so I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, and it's basically like childhood friends to lovers, like coming of age. This guy and girl live next to each other, and every summer they spend it together. And then, like, as the summers go on, they start like forming a relationship, but it's always like the wrong time. And then it flashes back from when they were kids and forward to when they are like adults. And yeah, so it's kind of just like a process of their relationship and them going from like friends to actually like liking each other.
I feel like my book and your book were really, really similar. And that's really weird to me. I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, which is also about summertime and friends from college who never ended up dating. Their relationship never worked out. Towards the beginning, there was a moment where they kissed. And then right after that moment, they ended up ghosting each other for like 2 years. But the girl, Poppy, who's also the narrator, reaches out to the boy Alex, and they end up going on a vacation together to Palm Springs to reconnect and everything. And they just end up falling in love. There's so much tension that every chapter just gets more and more intense until they end up falling for each other.
I saw that theme in my book a lot too, like where every time they would get closer, like something would like come between and like bring them back. It was kind of like like that saying, like one step forward, like 3 steps back. Like I guess like I'll just go ahead with my book, but like in my book, like it's basically like about a girl whose like mother passed away. So she moves to New York with her boyfriend, and like her boyfriend's like pretty wealthy, and like she was gonna like marry him and stuff. And then like one day when she's working, like she runs into like this like guy that she like really likes, and he ends up being like her fiance's best friend. So like all throughout the book, like it's just kind of like a love triangle like between them, but like if you read the book, like everybody like ships like the guy that she ran into and her like not her like original fiance. But there's like a lot of back and forth in the book. So it's kind of like there's like a theme of like betrayal in the book because she like always feels betrayed to like her original fiance, but then also to like the new guy because like she's going back and forth between the two of them. I'm trying to think, and like money plays like a big role in the book because like both of the guys have like a lot of money and like buy her stuff to like try to like win her love over. So that's mine.
I feel like that kind of relates back to mine almost, where it's like we want each other, but we shouldn't. But you know, the forbidden love where the tension is so high and you just really shouldn't, but you're going to.
Yeah, like you know you're not supposed to be like doing something, but like you do it anyways.
Yeah.
Ends up working out, I guess.
Right.
Okay, so like the main theme is like friends to lovers, or like right person, wrong time. Those are the most like overall themes that I see.
What book did you read again?
Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I
Oh,
haven't.
nice. I feel like a lot of us had that same theme, friends to lovers or like right person, wrong time. I had that theme definitely, and Catherine had it
There's
too.
Lake House, which is like the whole plot of this whole thing. So they've known each other since they were like kids. They dated after they got out of high school, and then spoiler alert, he's an alcoholic. So they break up because he does the whole "you deserve better than me," blah 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 blah. So then he has to come back to the lake house to get his portion of his trust fund that his grandfather left him. So that's where the second chance comes in, because he goes back to Lake Wisteria and he's like, oh my God, I'm still in love with this girl, blah, blah, blah. And she wants nothing to do with him. And that's pretty much the whole basic point. I did read The Final Offer by Lauren Asher. I forgot to say that. So
My book was
You,
wide, but I did not add that in. You reminded me. But go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I feel like your book, Kylie, kind of touches on the idea of like finding home.
Mm.
Like you said, like the guy like went back to like where he came from, which is also present in my book. The girl, the main character and narrator in my book, Poppy, is basically a traveling journalist. So she goes on vacations and has experiences and writes about it, and that's her job. But this particular vacation that she took with Alex, she like really wanted to leave home with him, but then ended up ultimately finding home within him.
I don't know if yours did this, but he gets back and he like absolutely does not want to be there. So like he is like against spending any more time than he has to. And obviously the trouble comes in when she's living in the house that he has to sell, and they co-own it. They're on the deed together. So he can't buy her out of her shares of the house, and he can only sell the house if she agrees to it. So that's kind of where I guess the conflict in the beginning of the book starts, is because they have that argument already and they don't want to be around each other.
The two characters in my book also have this big argument about like their hometown. The girl Poppy left like her hometown. They both come from the same hometown, which is obviously where they met, even though it was in college. But they come from the same hometown anyways, and Poppy hated where she was from, so she left and she went to New York to follow her dreams. But the guy never really detached himself from home. So they had this whole argument about like like he was mad at her for being ashamed of where she was from, and all of that, and she just realized like you don't have to go far to find your real home, because it might just be where you are.
I kind of see a lot of that in my book because the girl, her name's Emily, like kind of faces like a lot of uncertainty like in her first relationship, but like because she's like right out of college and like she just lost her mom and like she's in like a time of grief, and so she kind of like, when you're in like kind of that situation, like you kind of just go with like whatever, and like any like mistreatment you're facing like kind of is overlooked by like all the good that you're facing like from like that from her fiance. And then like finally like as she like life goes on and like she settles down, like she realizes like that the mistreatment like she was facing like is not normal, and like that shouldn't just be like overlooked by like all the good things that he's doing for her.
My book kind of aligns with what you said about her trying not to like the last thing you just said. She doesn't want to ignore all the bad things that he did. So I said that he was an alcoholic. So obviously, and then like you find out later in the book, her sister has issues with drug abuse, which kind of ties into why she's so against talking to him again. But he later in the book, he tries to start winning her back, and he like he starts buying her these things, and she's like, yeah, these are great, but I don't want to ignore the fact that you mistreated me like when you were drunk, and that he like blatantly would ignore when she said that she was uncomfortable when he would drink a lot or when he would like be drunk around her. So that is a point that kind of relates in our two books, I would say.
I can't really relate to that through my book, but I really love the theme of like just finding home in somebody else who you really never kind of figured could happen, or especially like with that person. I love that theme. I think it's very summery and just like a new love with the blooming of the plants and the sunshine and everything. I love that theme.
Yeah, my book was very much like summer vibes, like them being at a cabin every summer, and kind of going back to what Ava said. So like she like had this cabin and she would go every summer, and he actually, Sam, the main guy, he lived there. Like his family lived there, he grew up there. And eventually her family sold their cabin and she moved back to Toronto and then never came back and never saw him again for like, I think it was like 10 years or whatever. And like what brought her back is Sam's brother was like, our mom passed away and they're having a funeral, but like we'd love to see you. And so she goes back and it's like this whole weekend and there's so many emotions, and she realizes that like she's sad she never came back, and like kind of going back to that home thing, like she feels so at home with Sam and everything. So yeah, I definitely see some connections there with your guys' books.
Yeah, it's crazy how like the springtime and the summer is like such a huge symbol for falling in love. Like that's like, you know how like our generation always says it's like cuffing season. It's like springtime is like when you find romance or like a relationship. And like it's a big joke, but it's true. As we can see in so many of our books here, like that's just such a common thing is you fall in love as the flowers are blooming, like you said, Taryn. Like that's just so present in our lives. It's crazy.
So not to like change the theme, but did any of you guys have like a reoccurring symbol in your theme? Like in my book, there was just so much talk of bees. So my main character's grandfather was a beekeeper, and that traveled down through him. And once his grandfather had passed away, he moved to his home in North Carolina to tend to the bees and make them get the honey and all that. So was there a reoccurring theme or symbol throughout your guys' books?
Mine, I saw a reoccurring theme, like as odd as it sounds, is baseball. Because like the girl, Emily, like the main character in my book, like knew that like the other guy like was the one, because she like loved baseball growing up. Like it was something she always like did with her mom, like watched games and stuff. And like her fiance, like her original fiance, like hated baseball and like wanted nothing to do with it. But like the new guy that she met like loved baseball, and like they would like watch it together and stuff. And like baseball was like always like brought like in, like they would like, I don't know, like the moment she realized she liked him like was at a baseball game. And I think it's like fitting for the book though.
In my book, like the symbol was like for both of them, they both liked books. Like the main guy, Sam, he was reading medical books because he wanted to go to medical school. So like he was super smart. So he'd read them all the time. And then she was writing like horror short stories. So like they would kind of bond over that. And that's how they'd spend most of their time together. So yeah, books was definitely a big symbol of mine.
I agree. I'm really creeped out by how similar our books are, Catherine. Um, the I feel like an unofficial symbol of my book would also be literature. The guy Alex is an English teacher, and he kind of like struggles to find a job, while the girl Poppy is a traveling journalist. So like there are moments where they bond over like their writing and English and books and things like that too.
In my book, I would say it's Dares. Like, so when they were teenagers, he would spend the summers at his grandfather's lake house where she lived. And they would dare each other to do things. And they had a rickety old like board on their dock that they would flip over and tally mark when they finished a dare. So throughout the whole book, they'd like dare each other to do other things and stuff like that. And then at the end, the board, because like the dock like they like wreck the dock or something, like it breaks or they like demolish it. And so she thinks this board with her and Cal's tally marks on it is like gone. And so then he comes back in and then he has the board and then they have like a whole sentimental moment. So that's, I would say Truth or Dare is probably the main overarching repeating thing in the book.
That's really ironic because that's like a game that you would play in your childhood, and your book does touch on like childhood and stuff like that.
Right. That's how like their whole story starts, is that they knew each other since they were kids and then it just kind of developed into what it is at the end of the book. So
something that I noticed earlier when we were all sharing different aspects of our book is death, like in these romance novels, is so prevalent. Like somebody dies and, oh, I'm gonna find a new town, or I'm gonna go back to my childhood lover, or I'm gonna do this and that and this and that. And somebody, always piques your interest after, a death has happened. And I'm curious to why you guys would think, like, why is an author pushing death in all these romance novels? Do you guys think it's because like something died and then like a love is born, or something else?
that's funny that you mentioned that. I saw somewhere that somebody describes it as somebody's life ending and somebody's new one beginning. So because it's usually these people that die in these romance books are usually people like their parents, grandparents, siblings. It's usually somebody who they love like a lot, or maybe not. Some I've read some where they don't like them, but somebody had said that they're like replacing, that's not the right word, but like they have all this love for the person that passed away and they're moving it on to this new person that's in their life, just kind of in like a different way, like a different type of love, but they're now finding somewhere to like put that energy into.
Yeah, I feel like the whole finding love thing in a moment of grief is very like filling the void that might have been created when you lost somebody that you loved.
Now my question is, do you guys think that that's a little bit toxic?
I do. I kind of like going back at what you just like said. Like, I think like a lot of books where like there's like death or like somebody moves away, like something like that. Like, I think it goes with like the reoccurring theme, like absence makes like the heart grow fonder, because usually like when the book, it usually like is towards the end or like the beginning, and it's just like the other person, like the partner, like kind of like dreading on about like how much they miss them and like all the memories they had together and like blah blah blah.
I think timing in books is really important. So like when the person dies, because I've read some books where it's looked like somebody's taken advantage of vulnerability that somebody's given to them because they need somebody to be there. But like in my book, it's set like 2 years after his grandfather dies. And so he's had time to, I guess, process it, even though he thought that his grandfather was like completely disappointed in everything that he did. But yeah, I think timing's important because there's some books that you read that's like they die and then they're like immediately together because somebody is vulnerable and somebody needs somebody else in a time where they have nobody else.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, like, and obviously this is a book, so not real life, but it makes you wonder, like, if this person wouldn't have died, would we really be together? Like, it makes you wonder if it's actual genuine love or if the characters are just clinging onto each other in a moment of tragedy.
I also think it's a little toxic. how can we replace the whole like the love that we had for say like a lost family member or like best friend and just like kind of shove that into like a mold that isn't the right one. And I think that that's really not fair to say the new person or even yourself because nobody realizes when they're doing something toxic, or sometimes you do and you continue to do it, but um it's not fair to yourself, I think, because sometimes a death and grief can really blind or blur your conscious of is this right or is this wrong.
Did you guys have like a lot of tension in your books? Like for me, I felt like every chapter was like just getting more and more intense in terms of like the conversations they would have or like arguments that would happen. And especially for me, like the narrator in the book was the girl. So she told readers like, I'm falling more deeply in love with this guy, or this is why I love this person. So like we knew her side of the story, but we never really got a chance to hear what the guy's thoughts were. What about you guys?
For mine, it was like dual point of view. So I got to see both their sides. And like it started when they were 12 years old. So they were like just friends. But like each, as they like grew up, you can tell that they each started liking each other, but they wouldn't admit it to each other. So there was definitely that tension.
Yeah, that's really similar to mine. There was both points of views, and they both had their sides of how they felt, but wouldn't express it to each other, and it got more and more as the book like continued. So
I saw that in my book too, like where it showed like all three point of views at my point. And the author, I really liked how she did this. Like she like made the reader feel sympathy for like all people and like didn't just like exactly point out a bad guy.
Yeah, mine's also dual point of view. So mine's not so much tension as like they can't like stay away from each other. It's her realizing that like the more time she spends with him, the more that she's like starting to forgive him and she doesn't want to. So it's more of him wanting to like get back together and her being like, no, I can't do this again because he was still not dealing with his alcoholism. So yeah.
I also noticed that in mine, where mine was set in the boys, so Trevor's point of view, but he was just like dying and like obsessing over knowing the Natalie character more, that it almost like consumed a lot of his life. And I feel like the tension was like almost with himself because she was really not giving into this like almost trap of him like love bombing her and asking her on all these dates. So I feel like he almost like mistook the tension with them too, with the internal tension with himself and his obsessiveness.
Like your book has a lot of like plot points that I've never read about before.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I haven't ever read anything like this.
It sounds interesting because like I've read books before where they've like love bound before, but yours just is like
I'm almost like hyping it up a lot. It's a little more boring than what I'm
okay.
giving off. It's very slow and you're like reading so much because it's like you want that action that's just not there.
That's actually a good little segue. I want to know if anybody's were like slow burns or if they like happened like immediately. It sounds like most of them were like leading up until like the last 3/4 of the book, but I do kind of want to hear about that.
Mine was
My book-
definitely a slow burn.
Same with me. It was like just waiting and waiting and waiting. And these are the types of books that you can pretty much guess what's going to happen. Like, these two characters are going to end up together, or they're going to kiss or confess their love, or whatever form that might come in. But you just have to wait, and that's what makes you want to keep reading.
yeah, mine also was a slow burn, but like you knew it was gonna happen because they both had their feelings like on their own. They just didn't tell each other.
And it would be really disappointing if you thought that these two characters were gonna end up together and they didn't. And I'm
Mhm.
sure there's probably books like that, but I
I
think all
almost
of
wish
ours
that
are pretty
that
much happy
happened with
ending.
my characters because of how like almost like sick the situation is where her husband is literally in a coma. I wish that they had like their moment and they're like, yeah, I love you, but we're not going to do this because this is wrong.
Right. I feel like most of the time, all morals are thrown out of romance books. They don't.
So true.
Who cares about cheating? We don't care about husbands. We don't care about kids. It's all out the window. All is fair game.
Very true.
But I wouldn't say mine was like a slow burn because like throughout parts of the book, they like got together, they would like sleep together, and then they'd be like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't have done that. Like that was a complete mistake. And then they'd go back to not talking to each other. So it was kind of like each time it was kind of like a buildup in different sections of the book. And then they'd like hit the top and then it just go back down. And then they'd just do it all over again.
The
So
same thing happened in my book, but only once. They only did that once and thought it was a bad idea, but then they ended up getting together. So, yeah.
This was a great discussion. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.